Tonight on Larry King Live we are joined by George Clooney to discuss his campaign to get a $10 billion grant from the Organization of African Unity.
Hi, thanks for having me on tonight, Larry. I am glad to be here.
So I understand that you are campaigning to improve living conditions for the citizens of Mozambique. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about this country?
Yes, that's correct, Larry. Mozambique is a developing country in Africa. Currently, more than 75% of the population there engages in small-scale agriculture. However, agriculture in Mozambique is suffering from inadequate infrastructure, commercial networks, and investment. On top of that, Larry, although the country heavily relies on agriculture, approximately 88% of the land in Mozambique is uncultivated.
Well, that is shocking, George. I am curious though, why can't the Mozambique government pay for this infrastructure themselves, to help grow agriculture in the region?
Well, Larry, as of 2009, 58% of the government budget relied on foreign aid. The government simply does not have the tax income to fund a project as large as this.
Wow, okay, so George, what is the first step in improving agriculture and infrastructure in Mozambique?
I'm glad you asked, Larry. If you look at neighboring countries, they have many dams scattered along their water sources. However, Mozambique currently has only 3 major dams in the country. If they increased the number of dams, they could produce more hydroelectric power, which is more affordable and sustainable. We also want to focus on micro-hydroelectric power.
Okay, well, what is micro-hydroelectric power, George?
Micro-hydroelectric power can be used to smaller towns to help power villages, without the construction of dams. This power can also be used for water pumps to help irrigate fields used for farming.
Well, that sounds very interesting. But let me ask you this, George, what system of irrigation is currently in use in Mozambique?
Citizens in Mozambique are limited to simple surface irrigation, which is a primitive and outdated system. We aim to install more modern and efficient ways of irrigation throughout the country.
Well, since we are talking about irrigation, how clean is the water in Mozambique?
Frankly, Larry, the quality of water in Mozambique is terrible. Currently, only 28% of the water is sanitized. We would use the grant for both large and small-scale sanitation projects.
I would also like to point out to our viewers a statistic that George provided for us. Currently, 1.8 million people per year are killed by waterborne diseases around the world, showing how serious of a problem this is, folks.
It's terrible, Larry. Something needs to be done.
So, can you into more specifics of how the funds would be allocated?
There are 3 parts to our plan, focusing on irrigation centers, hydroelectric development, and water sanitation and filtration.
Okay, well, why don't you start off by explaining the water sanitation and filtration portion of the plan?
First, we plan to allocate $500 million towards updating water sanitation in Beira, which is the 2nd largest city in Mozambique. Second, we will allocate $400 million to improve water sanitation facilities in Nampula, which is the 3rd largest city in Mozambique. The population of Nampula has been growing steadily since 1970, and new water sanitation facilities are required to service the growing population. Lastly, $1.1 billion will be distributed between 11 provinces for water sanitation projects.
Wow, it sounds like millions of people will directly benefit from this funding, George. What is the next portion of your plan?
The next phase of our project will focus on water irrigation. We plan on distributing $2 billion split between the 11 provinces for irrigation projects. In addition, we will allocate $500 million to provide farmers with educational programs focused on improving farming techniques used in Mozambique.
Okay, now, let me ask you why the $2 billion is being split between the 11 provinces?
Well, Larry, the provinces themselves have a better understanding than the federal government of where the expansion and growth of irrigation is needed most. We are putting the funds directly into the hands of those who need it.
Okay, George, thank you for clarifying that. What is the last portion of your plan?
The final phase of our plan focuses on hydroelectric power. $4 billion will be granted to a hydroelectric facility to supply power to the city of Maputo, which is the capital of Mozambique. Also, $1.5 billion towards micro-hydroelectric power will be distributed amongst facilities throughout the country, in an attempt to provide power for various towns and large villages.
Well, thank you for coming on the show, George, to explain this plan to the viewers. It is truly a great cause. George Clooney, ladies and gentlemen.
Thanks for having me on, Larry.